Okay, so I just got a notification on my phone that we're live, so I'm gonna go ahead and start. I didn't see anything in the chat, but just wanted to say, a brief hello to all our internet friends out there. Welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed Delta Lake Community Office Hours. My name is Will Gurton. I'll be your host today. I'm actually filling in for the wonderful Vini Jaiswal, and I think that we're live currently on the YouTubes and LinkedIn. So go ahead and post your questions down in the chat. We'll get to them one by one. Kind of a routine question. I'm sorry, but I'm always curious. Where are folks joining in from around the world? So feel free to introduce yourself down in the chat and tell us what part of the globe you're from. So I'm always curious. We'll just give it a few more minutes for more folks to join. But I'll tell you what, guys, I am sick and tired of all this rain up here in New York. It's been raining for the past 3 days. I feel like I just need to go somewhere warm just to dry out. What about you guys? What part of the globe are you from, and how's the weather?
I'm down in LA right now, and it is pretty beautiful as always. Sorry, what?
I'm in Austria, and it's also pretty nice, but it's already getting dark, even though like my background seems that it's super bright, but no, it's almost getting dark outside. 6
Nice.
p.m.
Yeah, in Germany, Berlin, it's also getting darker, but the day was pretty nice. Like one of these very nice autumn days. So it was a bit cold, but a lot of sun, so it was fine. No rain.
Very nice. Are the leaves starting to turn over there?
Sorry? Oh yeah. The leaves are starting to turn over. At least the tree in front of my window is almost, there are no leaves anymore, so it's almost gone. But yeah, it's transitioning period.
That's awesome. Up here in New York, it's not like LA. We actually get seasons, but no, everything's still green here. But cool. I'm just monitoring the chat here. Feel free to post your questions there in the chat for questions about Delta Lake. We'll get to them one by one, like I said. But I just wanted to get started. I wanted to give a brief introduction to everyone. At this point, you might be wondering where Vinny's at. She'll be back in 2 weeks for the next session. Just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Will Gurton. I'm a specialist solutions architect, a mouthful. I like to say SSA at Databricks. Been with the company for about 4 years now. And I'm coming to you live from Long Island, New York. That's right. I can't get enough bagels and Billy Joel, basically. And what I do at Databricks is I help a lot of our financial services customers build out high-performant Delta Lakes that can actually scale. So we have an awesome panel for you all today. I'm really excited to introduce Nick and Fabian, both from Databricks, as well as the Power BI expert, Gerard. But please feel free, again, drop your questions in the chat. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the meantime, I wanted to go around the Zoom room, give a brief round of introduction. So Nick, I know you're probably sick and tired of this by now, but for those folks that are on the call that don't know you, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Nick Karpov. I'm a developer advocate here at Databricks. I've been at Databricks for about 5 years. Before I became a developer advocate, I actually worked in a similar role as you, Will, as a solutions architect on the post-sale side. So I've been involved in Spark and Delta for a very long time, and really excited to work on it.
Awesome. What about you, Fabian? Could you give a brief introduction of yourself, what you do at Databricks?
Sure. I mean, some of you might have already seen me on this format like a few months ago. So basically, I'm with Databricks now 4 months. And in my prior life, I basically worked on Apache Flink, and that's why I'm now mainly involved in like the Delta Flink development and everything that's going on in this direction.
Awesome. And I guess lastly, Gerard, could you please give a brief introduction, talk about some of your accomplishments?
Yeah, my name is Gerard, working for a small consulting company called Pico, and focusing on Microsoft Azure data platform for the last 15 years or since it's available there. Working with Delta since it's public in Azure. And as I have a very strong background in Microsoft BI and also Power BI, I decided to build the Power BI connector for the Delta Lake, and that's what I'm here for.
That's really awesome. I tell you what, I have a lot of future questions I know I'll be reaching out to you about. But I just want to start with kind of like a fun question. I know a couple of weeks we released 2.1.0 version of Delta Lake, included a lot of awesome features. So I just wanted, kind of curious, Nick, what was your favorite feature and why?
My favorite feature, I mean, generally as part of the 2X releases, probably change data feed, just because it sets the basis for a lot of potential new integrations. the ability to incrementalize your pipelines, so you can roll like your own incremental maintenance of various views. So that's really cool. Specifically in 2.1, I think some of the new features that we extended into SQL for time travel, particularly, are great. So now there's always this kind of battle between Spark support for various syntax in SQL. So it takes some time for the projects to come together to be able to support that. So that's what I'm most excited about. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm really excited for Change Data Feed. I know that it was just released actually in their Delta Sharing repo as well. A lot of customers, I could see a huge benefit of that too. And I'm just going to kind of pick on you here, Nick, because I know you were also in a similar role. I was just kind of curious, how did you see other customers adopt Change Data Feed, and how did that apply to some of their real life use cases?
Oh yeah, I mean it's well, I guess fundamentally it's not like an entirely new pattern. In fact, it's a very common pattern. So I think it was always inevitable that Delta would get there as one. Specifically in the field, basically people were trying to get the changes from their tables because their tables are huge. And so if you want to just get the changes specifically, then you need to look at everything that's been added, removed. You need to join those things together. It's a very expensive operation, and kind of derive yourself, what's changed, what's inserted, what's deleted. And that's difficult work to do. It's error prone. Everybody has to redo it. And it's extremely slow. In all likelihood, you just did an expensive operation to merge. And then you also need to do an expensive operation to figure out what really changed. So it was a pretty direct result of a lot of the stuff that we were just doing in the field already. So it was just kind of a swap in, like, hey, you're already doing this, you're already deriving these changes. And now here's a feature that will do it much faster, support it natively, won't be error prone, and is semantically very easy to reason about, like very expressive. So
Awesome. Just wanted to switch gears here while we wait for a few more questions to kind of get dropped into the chat here. But kind of switching gears here over to the Power BI connector. Garrett, would you mind talking a little bit about that, what that development lifecycle looked like, how you got involved, and how you're able to contribute that project to the Delta Lake community?
Yeah, sure. So it actually started all when we were working at a customer, and he kind of wanted to visualize the data that he has in a Delta Lake table in Power BI. So, but there was like the Databricks connector always there in Power BI kind of, but it always required like a running cluster, which can be quite expensive, and the customer didn't want to pay for it. So we said, okay, like we try to parse the Delta log in Power Query, and then read the right Parquet files, do all the metadata operations and data type conversions, etc., and then just return the results. And yeah, that's what the connector is actually doing. So it's actually it's a bit more complex than that. Like parsing everything out of the JSON files in the Delta log and the Parquet files and combining them. It's quite exhaustive actually. But by now it's actually working pretty well. And for everyone who's interested, I mean, the code is in the repository, in the Delta connector repository, and it also features a Power BI template files where you can basically see all the single steps that are done inside the connector. Where like reading the last Parquet file for a checkpoint, reading the remaining JSON files, combining all the Parquet files, reading all the metadata, etc. That's all in there. So if you're interested, just have a look. And it also gives you like a very good idea of how Delta Lake works internally and how the files are organized. So I think that was also one of the reasons for me to actually do it, to get more into it. And yeah, it was a really good exercise also.
That's awesome. So basically you learned by doing. Kind
of, yes. And yeah, then I think Danny Lee reached out to me when I want to contribute it to the official connectors, and I said, yeah, well, why not? So yeah, since then it's there.
Peer pressure.
We also just recently added support for MinReader version 2. So if you have like this like dynamic renaming and removal of columns, this is now also supported. Yeah, that's it, I think.
Awesome. And then I know you mentioned, you made reference to basically the GitHub repo. Is that the best place for users to basically get started and maybe follow along a quick start?
Well, it depends on the repo that you're talking of. So the connectors repo is probably not the best thing. If you want to get into Delta Lake, I mean, there's the official Delta Lake repository that contains all the information. Also about transaction log, etc. Delta log. I would probably go there. Yeah, because, well, the connectors is just really the connectors and not necessarily too deep into Delta Lake itself.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. So switching gears here a little bit over to more of like the structured streaming side of Delta Lake. So, Fabian, I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on what is some of your favorite features of Delta Lake, maybe how that relates to Apache Flink as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really great that we are now moving towards this kind of like streaming Delta Lake where we obviously have like more and more like real-time requirements and more like real-time ingestion use cases, and that also like the Delta has basically like opened this whole space up. It's not only like structured streaming, but it's also like Flink queries now writing to Delta. And this is, turns out to be like a really great thing since you get like these kind of like isolation guarantees. So you will never lose your data. So everything is and ending up in a structured format. So that's like really great. And even if you then like want to like have some of your BI queries running on it, you can do that. And having this kind of like open standard is like, for me, the most promising thing about Delta.
That's awesome. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to the audience. If you wanted to post any of your questions, feel free to drop them in the chat at any time. I know we're kind of bantering amongst us panelists, but if you have any questions related to Delta Lake, this is very much an office hours format. So we'd love to get to any of your questions you might have related to Delta Lake, or maybe it's some of the existing features that were just released. Maybe it's questions about some upcoming features that we should all kind of hope for and look forward to. So in the meantime, I just wanted to kind of switch back over to Nick for a little bit and talk about a little bit more about some of those features that were just released in Delta 2.1.0. So besides change data feed, where do you see the other kind of top features being released used?
Do you mean features that have already been released or things that are part of the roadmap?
Both, either one.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess obviously column mapping, which was already mentioned, is pretty big. I know we didn't support it natively, kind of out of the box, and that was actually one of the strengths of the project. So there's some other formats out there that actually have that built in. And so for a very long time, those Parquet files were not directly compatible with other readers because they would just be reading, some unique IDs. The Delta project, on the other hand, started with kind of supporting Parquet truly kind of out of the box. So, you wouldn't get any of the asset guarantees, but you would be able to read those Parquet files successfully and actually use that data without doing additional like resolving column names and things like that. So the release of the feature kind of in it, like on top of the kind of underlying architecture is exciting and shows evolution. Very widely used. Obviously, you can now alter the table, drop columns kind of dynamically and not have to rewrite the files. That's really cool. With the latest release, obviously, kind of I spoke of time travel being supported through the SQL APIs. That's like kind of alluded to it, but it's really a consequence of being supporting Apache Spark 3.3, which is what I was talking about those two coming together. So now that syntax can be supported. In terms of the kind of upcoming features, things in the roadmap, the things I'm most excited for are the deletion vectors. Those were just posted. A design document was posted to the roadmap. So if you're interested in that, definitely take a look. That's going to enable much faster merges or updates to files. It's kind of fundamentally Delta works at the file level. Currently and soon to be in the past, the process of updating those files was really marking them as deleted or stale tombstone files, and then rewriting the entire contents of the file and marking those as active files. So that's that was the operation, and the consequence of that is that if you had rows distributed that were throughout the entire range of files, like very few rows, you have 1,000 files and 1,000 rows that you wanted to change that were perfectly distributed. So just to change those 1,000 rows, you'd have to rewrite the entire table. So With things like deletion vectors, that's no longer, that will be kind of one of the things that deletion vector address, since we'll actually just write out new files that say, hey, you know, this is these indices and these parquet files are, you know, considered old, stale. So now the readers can read the existing files plus those little deletion vectors, and then derive the current state of the table. So it's kind of deletion vectors, merge on read. It's, you know, it's all part of the same story. So that's what I'm really excited about. I think a lot of people will benefit from that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I know you mentioned, you know, previously working out in the field at Databricks. That was one of the things I absolutely hated, especially for customers with huge data sets. And I basically had to sit them down and explain, like, okay, you might have an invalid character in this column name. Unfortunately, you have to rewrite all this data to drop the column essentially. But, you know, like you said, essentially just renaming or dropping a column is just a metadata update, and it's cheap. So pretty awesome. So we have actually a question that came in here on YouTube. So we're just asked a quick question. Will my transaction fail if delete is running on the table and you're also trying to insert data at the same time? I see when delete runs, it rewrites the partition, but is there a more optimized way to do delete?
No, if you can filter it down to one particular partition, so as long as there is no overlaps in partitions, so like you delete from partition A when you write into partition B, that should be fine. If both are touching the same partition and the same rows potentially, then, well, you can run into issues, obviously.
Okay, and then what happens, you know, say that you do have that kind of concurrency exception, you know, what is the remedy there? Do you need to abandon the delete? Do you need to retry it?
Depends. So basically what happens is, like, two processes trying to modify the same data, and only one of them can succeed. The second one will actually fail with getting the error that, like, the data was changed by a previous transaction. And then you need to check whether you still want to delete the data that was modified by the previous transaction. And by the concurrent transaction, which is pretty hard to say, actually.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry, I was trying to tee you up there about optimistic concurrency there in Delta, but you nailed it. Perfect. Cool. Yeah, I guess we're just kind of waiting for more questions to come in. In the meantime, we're just kind of ask questions around the room. Garrett, just to kind of double click a little bit more on the Power BI connector, what are kind of some of the future improvements that you see on the roadmap there?
Okay, it's actually only one as of now, which is that, so for those of you who are familiar with Power BI, you have, like, this nice visual UI where you can, like, filter down your data. As of now, the connector allows you to do partition filtering, but you have to basically do it manually, kind of. You have to write, like, the code to filter on that partition. There's also ways to do it automatically, let's say, using the UI. So if you do a UI filter, like similar to Excel, you have to drop down and list you all the distinct values and just select one of them. If you do this in the partition column, in the future, this will also push the partition filter down to the Delta table, instead of reading everything into Power BI and then discarding 90% again. So that's like the main feature that I hopefully will be able to implement by the end of the year.
Very cool. Very cool. What about you, Fabian? Can you talk about some of the upcoming features that might pertain, you know, specifically for Flink or structured streaming world?
Yeah, I think, like, especially for the Flink connector, one of the most awaited features is supporting, like, Flink 115 and above. So currently Flink is already, like, at 116, and the connector is a bit behind because we need to do some migration work. But I think this will be, like, a huge step forward, because with Flink 115, there are, like, new mechanisms we can use to make the connector, like, even more performant and even more reliable. And I think this is also, like, what currently we're seeing that people are waiting for. So yeah, we will keep you posted what's happening.
That's awesome. Really looking forward to it. Awesome. Yeah, again, like I said, this is kind of office hours format. So if you wanted to just drop your chat, it could pertain to Delta Lake, maybe about your current use case, how you're using Delta Lake. More than happy to answer them. Awesome. So I know that we kind of focused mostly on like Delta Lake so far. So I just wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit more on some of the other projects within the Delta Lake ecosystem, like Delta Sharing. So for those of you that have also been following Delta Sharing as well, one of the cool features, I also, like Nick, I really like the change data feed, which was released in the latest version. Huge impact there as far as being able for data recipients to keep track of incremental changes. So if you're curious about Delta Sharing or how to use it, definitely recommend checking out our repo there. Lots of cool updates as well as new features coming on the roadmap, like being able to stream from a shared query. So lots of cool, tidbits there. Nick, just wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about some of maybe some upcoming events around the Delta Lake ecosystem. Is there any event that's upcoming that users can keep track of and look forward to?
Sure. We'll be presenting at ODSC in November. So that's exciting. That's kind of the most, that's in just under a month. So it'll be a big one that we'll actually, it's going to be a few of us from the ecosystem team. And we'll be presenting kind of about Delta Lake and how it fits into the machine learning kind of workflow. So Delta Lake, MLflow together, and the entire life cycle of machine learning models, and how things like time travel can really help kind of work backwards from, hey, what changed in the data, what changed in the data that's being input into the model, at what time, what was the result of that on the model, enables things like keeping track of drift, things like that. So it'll be cool.
Awesome. Still kind of looking forward to some questions there in the chat. I do want to bring up one question that I got from a customer today. It's basically, I'm new to Delta Lake. I just basically converted my Parquet tables to Delta format. How do I determine, what is the correct size of files for the underlying Delta table? And how should I be looking at that to optimize? Does anybody have any opinions around that?
Well, I can start. I guess everyone has an opinion on this.
Sure.
I think like the rule of thumb is to have the files like between 250 and megabytes and 1 gigabyte. From my experience, that's good if it's like a read-only operation. But if you have like also frequent updates on the table and on the files, it's kind of better if they are a bit smaller, because then you don't have to rewrite that much data. But in the end, yeah, it very much depends on the use case, I would say. But yeah, trying to make them rather bigger than smaller, like having millions of small files is much worse than having like a one big file.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit. So you're definitely right. It's a very opinionated thing. We all have our opinions on it. I definitely agree with the kind of the general size range. I just want to point out that one thing that we definitely learned at Databricks, because Delta Lake is truly deployed across thousands and thousands of customers. It deals with petabytes of data daily. So we've seen a lot. And I think kind of the general consensus is closer to a gigabyte in file size for readers, obviously, is very successful. And then the other thing is really that it really does come down to measurement and keeping track of, like it does depend on the use case. So for instance, like 1 million small files might not be good for readers. But if you have a particular use case that's looking for good write throughput, then that might be your only option. And there are other strategies for dealing with small files, kind of as a secondary step. Not everything has to be achieved all at once. So yeah, so it really does depend on the use case. Measurement and benchmarking is extremely important. You should definitely take stock of what queries are typically being made, what are the patterns, like what is going to be expected, at what frequency. Things like that, like all that needs to be documented, then measured, and then you kind of can work your way backwards into what is the ideal file size.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Maybe also,
one other. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe also not only benchmark the read performance, but also the performance of your ETL jobs.
Yes, absolutely.
I had one customer once that they were frequently running merge statements on the goal tables, and they actually, like, with every merge statement, they're basically rewriting the whole goal table.
Yeah,
because like,
exactly.
petitions were changing, so the petitioning column could be changed and stuff like that. So that, yeah, wasn't ideal. But was like the only thing that they could basically do. There wasn't really a much better option, actually. So
Yeah, very cool.
there's not
I
much
know
to
we're
it.
kind of running low on time here. I do want to grab one last question here. I think this might be suited for you, Fabian. So Mohammed asks, here's a quick question regarding event ingestion without event stream management platform, i.e. linking the event producers directly to the landing zone. Are there white papers or documents comparing and formalizing the current practice? Any thoughts there?
Can you repeat at least the last part of the question?
Yeah, sure. So Mohammed is asking for, any white papers or documents that might formalize the current practice for data architecture.
Okay, around like this whole idea of event streaming. I guess when it comes to directly to white papers, probably like Nick is better suited to have those at some point. But I think in general, it should be possible with like the modern data lakes to like immediately write your data like from whatever processing system you're using into the data lake and don't buffer it between. So like basically what we've seen in the past a lot was that most of the event streaming architectures were built like around like streaming storage system like Pulsar or Kafka, and then were periodically basically batched and pulled and then written into your Delta Lake. And now you can immediately direct your real-time writers basically to your Delta tables and write into it. Hopefully that answers your question. Unfortunately, I can't link you to any direct white paper that describes these scenarios.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Mohammed just reminded me too. I missed his earlier question here, so I'm going to try and squeeze in here with a couple seconds left. I apologize. But basically, he's asking: is it possible to do event ingestion without event stream management platform? For example, linking the event producers directly to the landing zone. Is that possible today?
If I understood it correctly, he's asking basically, I mean, as long as there's a Delta ingestion connector for whichever platform you're using, this should be possible. I mean, if that's not the case, then you need to like either build it your own, or you need to like reuse one of the existing ones, which could be in your case like one of the event streaming platforms. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I apologize. I know we kind of ran out of time here. So just wanted to, I know we're kind of coming down here towards the end. I wanted to mention some upcoming events that folks on the call don't want to miss. So, you definitely want to mark your calendars for the 18th. That's where Denny and Simon will be hosting an awesome Ask Me Anything event. Check out some awesome blog articles on our delta.io website as well as any cool release announcements as well. Also tune into this awesome new series called Delta Lake Discussions with Denny Lee, or D3L2. I know that we're kind of down on time here, but on the behalf of everybody and the panel and myself, I want to extend a warm thank you for everybody tuning in today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, folks, see you. Thank you.
See you.